when I was 19, my friend Sean, who was a big goofball, came over to chill in our basement as he often would during the summer. I remember he had a Coke bottle in his hand and I was eating Wendy's when he said we should check out that creepy little cemetery across town. It was the most random idea ever, and I even told him that. Still, we had no school the next day, and I knew exactly which cemetery he was talking about. I don't know if one should even call it a regular cemetery. It's just a small plot of land with maybe 100 tombstones at most. The tombstones very archaic looking, and any time we'd pass, there would be no signs of anyone having come to visit within the last decade. The site probably dated back centuries, and it had this super creepy vibe to it because it was closed off by a gothic metal fence, and it was surrounded by woods on two sides, the road on one, and some old abandoned building on the other. Everything about it just gave scary vibes. It took a little persuading, but Sean managed to get me to want to check it out too. Ironically, it was a very cloudy, wettish kind of day, I guess conveniently adding to the mood. Sean pulled up his Honda to the side of the road. I told him to pull up more so it wasn't obvious. This was a low traffic road, so it would look kind of suspicious. He pulled up a few hundred feet down the road, and we got out and cut through the woods so that any potential passing traffic wouldn't see us entering the little cemetery. Hopping the fence in the woods was easy. It was maybe a 3 or 4 foot fence. Sean kind of took the lead on this since it was mainly his venture. He led us through the eerie little plot of land, and we looked at the archaic tombstones. They all seemed to be from the 19th century. The writing on some of them was illegible at that point. I know it sounds super dumb and cliche, but I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched constantly. I started looking around the surrounding woods. I told Sean how creepy this was. "I know," he replied. Still, with the feeling of being watched, I looked at the abandoned building next to the cemetery, at one of the windows. For a brief moment, I knew I saw someone standing at the window, even through the fog, smudge, and dirt on the glass, but they casually either ducked or walked away from the window. I told Sean we were being watched by someone in that building, and he turned to look at it as well. Then he went to look for the entrance to it. I told him don't. I said we should just leave before we get in trouble. I stayed still by the tombstone he was looking at while he walked around the building, and then he found a way in. He called me over, but I stayed put. Then I heard some loud kind of crack. So I looked in that direction, and there was this older man, probably around 55. Gray hair, had on a black raincoat, I believe he was wearing jeans, and he had a mustache, but that's all I really got of him. Then he opened his mouth and screamed, not just yelled, he screamed, "Get out." He screamed it so loud I thought I saw birds fly away from being startled. And just like that, I started to feel lightheaded, and suddenly everything went dark. The next thing I remember was waking up to being dragged in the woods. I freaked out, thinking I was being kidnapped, but when I turned and got up, I saw it was just Sean. Sean was freaking out about something. He told me to follow him and run back to the car, so I didn't ask questions. As we ran through the woods, I heard something close behind me, and when I turned, I realized we were being followed by someone, so I ran even faster. We got to his Honda, and he basically put it in drive before the car even had a chance to fully start. When Sean was inside that abandoned building, he found a sigil of Baphomet painted on the wood floor, which is basically the sign of Satan. Around it were a bunch of freaky dolls with buttons for eyes. He didn't get to see anything else in the building, because he heard the old man scream at me outside. He came running to find me passed out on the floor, and he saw the old man slowly walking over to me. He started to drag me away from the old man and into the woods. He actually literally picked me up and threw me over the fence to get me out. I quickly came back to consciousness, and that's when we ran. I had only fainted one time in my life, and it was at that moment. I don't know why I fainted, but it happening at a graveyard with some kind of satanic ritual building right next to it makes it that much stranger.